on this episode of The Unseen World.
In November of 1966, there were two young couples cruising around, and they claimed to have encountered a 7-foot-tall winged creature with red eyes.
There is a world all around you, filled with creations that will amaze. A world of destinations that astound. A world waiting to be explored. Come and discover the unseen world.
Since I was born and raised here in Point Pleasant, West Virginia, and grew up with the Mothman legend and story, naturally I've always been interested in what actually happened. So all my life I've known some of the people who witnessed this thing and encountered it. So I've collected things over the years, movie props, archives, newspaper clippings, rare things like that. That's how the museum came about. The collection is pretty much grown out of control. It's just a broad collection of everything Mothman. My name is Jeff Walmsley. I'm the founder and owner of the world's only Mothman Museum here in Point Pleasant, West Virginia. The Mothman story here in Point Pleasant began back in November of 1966. You had two young couples up in the T&T area, which is about 9 miles outside of town. It's an old ammunition depot that had been, abandoned since World War II.
The two couples were Roger and Linda Scarberry and Steve and Mary Millette, out for a joyride in Roger's 1957 Chevy Bel Air. As they drove, their headlights fell upon a terrifying sight. The horrified couple saw a massive gray figure standing in the road. It was 7 feet tall and had the body of a man. It had massive wings folded across its back, but most striking of all were its eyes, huge, round, and glowing red. The group fled, but the creature unfurled its great wings and gave chase. Scarberry pushed the car to 100 miles per hour, and the dark figure kept pace. But as they neared the edge of Point Pleasant, the creature veered off into a field and vanished.
They went to a local hamburger joint called Tony's Drive-In, went in and told the owner. He picked up the phone and called the sheriff's department because he told me that they were terrified. This was only the beginning of about a 2-year period with over 100 reported sightings of people seeing this thing. And my speculation was probably another 100 that never reported it, as fear of being made fun of and called crazy and stuff. It was a gamut of people. I mean, it was older people, it was educators, teachers, elderly people, teenagers, all kinds of different people. And I always thought if it was just 2 or 3 people, period, then I probably would have been a lot more skeptical. But I just never thought that many people could describe the same thing. It never harmed anybody physically. I've never talked to anybody who said they were physically attacked, but a lot of mental issues happened after people did see it. There was a local newspaper reporter here in Point Pleasant named Mary Hire, and she, and along with the writer John Keel from New York City, they investigated the Mothman sightings. She had told John Keel that she was having dreams about Christmas presents floating in the water.
Mary Hire wasn't the only one in Point Pleasant who had troubling dreams in the wake of the Mothman sightings. Several other people reported having similar nightmares. Nightmares that became omens, anticipating a terrible tragedy yet to come. Now, back to the unseen world.
I remember the sound of it.
The Silver Bridge, which connected the town of Point Pleasant to the state of Ohio, collapsed.
I still remember I was in the basement playing, 6 years old, and we lived about 5 miles north, and I heard just a loud boom, which at that point I thought it was either thunder or maybe a sonic boom from an aircraft of some sort, but it was actually, the bridge falling. 46 people passed away on the bridge disaster that day. Everybody here in Point Pleasant, even this many years later, knew somebody who was on the bridge. It was the worst bridge disaster in U.S. history, and it's still a fresh wound in the eyes of the people that still live here. The Mothman, activity happened in and around about the same time the Silver Bridge collapsed. Mothman sighting started in '66, the bridge fell in '67. And some people thought that there was a connection there, that it wasn't a coincidence that all that happened at the same time. The real reason the bridge fell, the investigators came in and found a cracked eye bar, which made the structure, collapse. But other people thought that it was just strange that a lot of those sightings kind of went away after the bridge fell. There were still sightings after the bridge fell, but people's attention were drawn more towards, this horrific disaster that, claimed 46 lives. So I don't think all those people perished in vain, because, it caused the bridge inspection in the United States was all changed after the bridge fell. Lyndon B. Johnson signed that into act the day after the bridge fell. So because of that bridge disaster, today inspections are mandatory. But people are still, they're kind of mystified by the whole occurrence of the events and stuff. And they're curious. I mean, they want to know about the bridge. They want to know who the people were that were on it. It has a story.
It was Friday, rush hour, only days before Christmas. Rescuers on the scene described the river as littered with vehicles, bridge debris, and Christmas presents bobbing along in the icy water. Sightings of a giant moth-like creature, prophetic dreams foretelling a horrifying disaster. In the span of a year, the small town of Point Pleasant had been turned upside down. But the strange events surrounding the town weren't over yet. The Unseen World will be right back. We now return to The Unseen World. Point Pleasant, West Virginia, a town rocked by tragedy and plagued with sightings of a creature known as the Mothman. But there was even more to the story, as witnesses reported visits from other entities, ranging from the curious to the downright bizarre.
Before the Mothman sighting started here in November of '66, there were a lot of people seeing a lot of UFOs and strange lights in the sky. Some people thought that the Mothman sightings were somehow related to the UFO activity. pretty much in the whole tri-state area, there was a lot of UFO reports and things like that. After the Mothman sighting started, and a lot of these people were going to the sheriff's department and reporting it, some of those witnesses claimed to have had encounters with these strange men in black. The men in black were here in town. They would approach witnesses. They would approach people like Mary Hire, who was writing the stories and put them in the newspapers. They dressed in black. They had the ties and the hats and the sunglasses. So a lot of people were spooked, about, who they were. They didn't know if they were military personnel, government officials, but it spooked a lot of people. As far as the UFO activity goes, a lot of people seen strange lights in the skies. There were a few accounts of spaceships or whatever landing in a field behind the houses and things like that. I've talked to a few people. One man named Noel Partridge, who had the German Shepherd, started barking as they looked out the backfield, and he said, these rotating lights on a spacecraft or whatever. The dog ran out the door, and they never found the dog again. That actually happened the night before the Mothman sighting started here on November 15th. A lot of the witnesses, and in particular Mary Hire, who was the writer for the local newspaper, talked about these men in black, didn't know who they were. They were a little spooked by them. Mary Hire said that on several occasions they would come into her office and basically stare at her without blinking an eye and ask her to please stop putting this into the newspapers. People didn't need to know about it. She said one of them actually picked up a pencil and stared at it, like they didn't know what it was. She said it was very peculiar. That spooked a lot of people because they didn't really identify who they were. One lady in particular, she went out to get the mail one day and a black car pulled up. People asking directions, they tried to pull her into the car, ripped her sleeve off of her blouse. So a lot of people, it was a reality. They had to live with it.
But mysterious men in black were not the only unnerving beings being encountered by residents of the West Virginia area. There was also the peculiar case of the grinning man, Indrid Cold.
The Indrid Cold incident happened at the same time as the Mothman and the UFO activity here in Point Pleasant. Happened about an hour away in Mineral Wells, West Virginia. There was a man named Woody Derenberger. He was driving down the road. Strange lights in the sky came over his car. He pulled over, and he claimed to have had direct contact with a being who called himself Indrid Cold. That is all documented in all that same time period as the Mothman activity.
Shortly after 7 o'clock, I was coming down Interstate 77, and just before I came to the intersection of Route 47, there was a car past me, had overtaken me from behind, and following closely behind this car was this unidentified flying object. As the car behind passed me, this object was following close behind it, and it swerved directly in front of my truck, turning crosswise, and it forced me to come to a complete stop. As soon as I had stopped, there was a door opened in the side of this vehicle, and this man stepped out and came to the truck. He asked me to roll down the window, and this man stood there, and he first asked me what I was called, and he asked me, "Why are you frightened?" He said, "Don't be frightened. We wish you no harm. We wish you only happiness." And I told him my name, and when I told him my name, he said he was called Cold. I was very frightened, and as far as I can understand, this was all mental. There was no spoken words from him. I knew what he was asking me, but yet he stood there and his mouth did not move. He had a smile on his face. He appeared very courteous and friendly, and after I talked with him a while, he told me, he said, "We will see you again," and he left in his vehicle.
Stay tuned. The unseen world will return. Now, back to the unseen world. Throughout the late 1960s, Point Pleasant became the epicenter of bizarre occurrences and unexplained phenomena. sightings of strange beasts, prophetic dreams of a terrible catastrophe, and visitations by alien beings turned the town into a hotspot for fans of the paranormal, and many residents have embraced their hometown's unique legacy.
The fact that it all happened in my hometown is the reason I think that I was drawn to the Mothman story. Not every small town in America has something, like, the Mothman. Before the museum opened in 2006, there was reporters and TV crews and curious people visiting. They were pretty much on their own. There wasn't really anywhere for them to go to sit down and look through archives and things like that. People would go to the TNT area to look around. They would come to my record store because I had, some Mothman merchandise and displays in there. And then, of course, the Mothman statue was put up around 2003. So a lot of people would come to see the statue.
But there's more to see than just the museum and statue. Every year, Point Pleasant plays host to the Mothman Festival, a celebration of the town and its most famous resident.
The Mothman Festival was created in 2003. Carolyn Harris and myself started that festival because we both had retail stores here on Main Street, and we thought it would be just a good idea to try it and see if it would bring people to town. The first festival drew about 500 people, and now the festival draws 12,000 plus. This will be our 18th year coming up in 2019. So it has turned into a major event for the town and tourism. A lot of people come, to visit the town, and then they like Point Pleasant. You have the Twin-to-Wee National Park. You have the River Museum, which is actually being rebuilt. And there was a tragic fire there this past summer. So a lot of river history, farm history. So I think, the whole thing with the Mothman Museum and the festival has been, even if you're not a hardcore Mothman believer, it's still interesting. The parents bring the kids love the Mothman stuff. The parents, may go and research something else. Point Pleasant is rich in history, not just Mothman, Silver Bridge, UFOs, and things like that.
Today, visitors from across the globe visit the small town of Point Pleasant, hoping to uncover the truth about the incidents witnessed by hundreds of residents. But whether they're searching for answers about UFOs, the Men in Black, or the world-famous Mothman, the strange occurrences around Point Pleasant may always remain a mystery.
I've never been in the business to convince anybody of anything. I don't know what they saw. And that's the most common question I get asked is, what do you think it was? And, I have no idea. I know that the people that I've talked to, they definitely encountered something. People have all kinds of different ways that they interpret, the Mothman. Some people thought it was just a large sandhill crane or a bird of some sort. And other people thought that it was something more than that. It was a little more scary. And I've noticed that a lot of little kids that come into the Mothman Museum kind of look at Mothman as being the way I looked at, Batman, kind of a superhero type. People have all kinds of different ways that they interpret, the Mothman or the creature or the bird or whatever. To me, it's a piece of history. It's a piece of time frozen. I think that the reason that the Mothman story is so popular and people are so interested in it is because it's an open book and nothing was ever proven or solved. People come here to Point Pleasant to the museum, they come to the festival, they just come all year long to kind of look into the story for themselves. That's what the museum's about. You come in and you look at over the archives and the articles and things like that, and you can decide for yourself. It's just never been solved, and I don't think it ever will.
If you'd like to visit the location featured in today's episode, here is more information. The world's only Mothman Museum is located in Point Pleasant, West Virginia. The museum is open 7 days a week, and admission is $4 for adults and $1 for children 10 and under. You can find more information online at mothmanmuseum.com. The Mothman Festival is an annual event hosted in the fall, featuring guest speakers, vendors, live music, and activities for the whole family. For more information or to purchase tickets, visit mothmanfestival.com.